This is your ultimate stop for everything sports. The Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. Should I say more? From the NFL, MLB, the NBA to MMA, it's all in here. The Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. Listen now.
And welcome to the GSMC Sports Podcast. I'm your host, Mark Souza. I want to jump into it, but again, thank you, all you beautiful people, for joining me this morning. We have a lot to talk about. We will start off with the World Series. Game 2 happened last night in Fenway Park. We saw the Boston Red Sox down the Los Angeles Dodgers 4-2. A tight contest last night, but we ultimately saw the Red Sox maintain their lead. We saw a brilliant pitching performance by their bullpen. Before we get too far into that game, though, we saw David Price, 6 innings pitched, 3 hits, 2 runs, 3 walks, 5 strikeouts, as he builds on his great performance in the postseason, as he's coming off his best postseason start. You could even argue that this start was more impressive, given the circumstances. We saw Ryu for LA not fare as well. 4 2/3, 4 runs, 6 hits, 1 walk, 5 strikeouts. As for the Red Sox, Mookie Betts, one of the best players in baseball, he showed up last night, 3 for 4 with a double. But all in all, I think the main storyline here is the Dodgers had 3 hits all night. They had them all in the 4th inning. They could not put together anything else other than the 4th inning when they made some noise. But the Red Sox bullpen comes in, 3 innings pitched after Price exits. No hits, no runs. So all in all, an outstanding performance for the Red Sox as they take both games at home. They hold court. They go out west to LA, where I'm sure temperatures will not be in the mid-40s. I would assume they're closer to the 70s and 80s at this time of year in Los Angeles, but it will be a difference. I'm sure the Dodgers are happy to get back home, get back to the West Coast in front of their fans, and not have to worry about the situation that is Fenway Park in October. It's hard for me to see the Dodgers coming back from this. I think we need to really understand what we're witnessing here, and not to take anything away from the Dodgers, but this has been the Red Sox season from very early on. They led the league in wins, 108. One of the best seasons in Red Sox history to date, which is saying a lot for a storied franchise like that. But, we talked about it in Game 1. After Game 1, the Red Sox lineup, it's just relentless. They only scored 4 runs last night, which seems like a down night for the hitters, but again, when you can get solid pitching like that, when your bullpen can go in and get you 3 innings with no runs and maintain that lead, the Red Sox are almost impossible to beat if the pitching is there, because we know the hitting is there. We know they'll put runs on the board. We saw them score 8 runs in a game that Kershaw pitched. We see them score 4 last night, which again, I will say was surprising to see them not score as many as in Game 1. Maybe not 8, but I thought with Ryu coming in, they'd have a big chance to put up big numbers last night. And Ryu, he gave up 4 runs in 4 2/3, and I think manager Dave Roberts limited the mistakes from him. They took him out earlier than later, I would say. So I thought that was a smart idea. But again, David Price, let's be honest, the Dodgers lineup may not be what the Red Sox lineup is, but it's still one of the best lineups in baseball. It's one of the best lineups, definitely in the National League, if not the best. And we saw him navigate through that lineup very easily again. The only inning that he had any issues at all was the fourth inning. But they take game two. Red Sox take game two. They hold court. They did exactly what they wanted to do, what they needed to do. And as they head out west, we will see what the Dodgers can do. But if you're a Red Sox fan, if you're a Red Sox player, I know they're riding that big wave. As they hold 2-0, they know that no matter what happens in Los Angeles over the course of the next 3 games, that they'll come back home, that they could win the series in front of their fans. I'm not so sure it'll get that far. I know a lot of people think it's going to be a sweep. A lot of people think, it's maybe 5 games, maybe 6. I was under the impression it would probably go 6 games. It's hard for me to keep that right now as I've seen what the Red Sox can do to the Dodgers. I want to go back to game 1 because, again, I thought the Dodgers gave the Red Sox everything they had, and to lose a game by 4 runs when I thought, they really fought in that game. They hit the ball. But again, that Red Sox lineup is relentless. I keep saying that same word, but it is true. It is true. So we look ahead. We look ahead to Friday when the series picks up again. Friday, Saturday, Sunday for the next 3 games. That at least 2 games, but at least 2, possibly 3 at in LA. So the pitching matchup, as we see, is Rick Porcello versus Walker Buehler. It's easy to see why the Dodgers need this one. If they don't win game 3, I think we can just write this series off and give the World Series win to the Red Sox. And how great would it be to see this team finish off this type of season? But we look at last night's game, and again, Mookie Betts I thought was outstanding for the Red Sox. 3 for 4 with a double. He's now batting .500 in the series, .556 on base percentage. Benintendi went 0 for 3. He did walk. But yeah, I mean, all things considered, I thought Ryu pitched fairly decent. He didn't, he gave his team a chance to win. He didn't come in, throw lights out. He didn't come in and do terribly, but it was a nice game for the bullpen for the Dodgers. I talked about the Red Sox and how their bullpen was fantastic last night, and they really were. They were fantastic. It was a great performance as they came in. The Red Sox shut down those Dodgers hitters in the last innings, but we got to take a look at the Dodgers and their bullpen. I mean, 4 1/3 themselves. Madsen, Urias, Kenta Maeda, Alexander, and Pedro Baez. No runs. They give up 2 hits, strike out 3 in that time, 1 walk. So a stellar performance for the Dodgers bullpen, although their hitters could not ever get the lead back, or they could not, close the gap. It was 4-2 Boston, and with the Dodgers not being able to close that gap over the course of the last 4 innings, we see Boston take that commanding 2-0 lead. And I just wonder. I wonder if this series is over. I cannot see the Dodgers coming back from this. If it was a different team, absolutely. But I just think that when we saw the ALCS, when we were watching the ALCS and the NLCS, but when we were watching the Dodgers the Red Sox and the Astros, it just seemed apparent that whoever won that series would win the World Series. And the Red Sox won that series convincingly, and here we are, 2 wins in a row in the World Series, a total of a 6-run differential, so it hasn't been terribly close. I think Game 1, Game one was a little bit closer, in my opinion, just because there was a one-run game as we approached the later innings. But again, it just seems like they're cruising. This lineup has there's no relief for the pitching staff. And the Dodgers actually give them full credit for not allowing another run after the fourth inning yesterday, after Ryu was pulled out of the game. So Friday, we will see Porcello and Walker Buehler. Again, Walker Buehler, one of the heroes for the Dodgers last series. He's a young pitcher. I was concerned about him when he pitched Game 7 against the Brewers, just because he had been amped up a little bit too much, I believe, in the playoffs thus far. But he was able to rein that in and able to pitch a stellar performance in that Game 7. So his confidence has to be high. But again, this is a different animal in the Red Sox, and he knows you can't go down 3-0 in this series, not to this team. So the pressure will be on the young pitcher. We'll see how he deals with it. Of course, that game is Friday night, so tomorrow night, 5:09 Pacific time again, 8:09 Eastern time. And then Saturday, the Dodgers have not. Right now, it looks like they have not posted who will pitch for them. It might depend on what happens tomorrow night. I think whatever transpires tomorrow night will change their approach for Saturday. Eovaldi will pitch for the Red Sox. So there is a chance here that there is a chance that the Dodgers, if they can win Game 3, maybe they see an opening with Eovaldi before the rotations turn over, before we get to see Kershaw and Sale and the big ones, the big pitchers in these rotations. It is interesting. We will see what happens, though. So again, that game will be Saturday. So Friday, Saturday, Sunday. So if you're sitting at home this weekend, you have a lot of baseball to watch. Again, obviously with the Dodgers not showing their hand on who they'll be pitching on Saturday night in Game 4, we don't know who will be pitching on Sunday. We can guess that it'll be Kershaw and Sale. I would probably guess that. But, we'll see. Maybe if the series is 2-2, maybe both teams will pitch someone else. Then they're number one. But it is interesting to see. So, I've been wondering if I don't want to say that this series is over, because it's two games. I mean, any team can play well in 2 games. So it wouldn't be the most shocking thing in the world if the Dodgers came back in this series. But it's just incredibly hard to convince myself that there's a way back for this team. Obviously, Game 3, I think it'll be imperative that they start off fast. They got to get a lead in this series. It just seems like they've been playing from behind or trying to play catch up to the Red Sox. And with a lineup like that, it seems like it's more often than not you'll get buried in this game rather than you'll come back. I think one key for Game 3 and possibly the rest of the series for the Dodgers is be the team that strikes blood first. You want to be on the front foot. You want to get that early confidence. You want to get those pitchers for Boston a little bit off. And you got to expect that you're going to give up runs. You have to expect guys like Mookie Betts, like JD Martinez. You have to expect that those guys, I mean, they're going to hit the ball. They're going to get on base. They're going to make things happen. We talked about up and down that lineup. There's really no relief. So you have to get a lead early. And when you get that lead, you have to keep passing runs on through. 1 run, 2 run, 3 run. It's not enough against this Red Sox team. Another interesting thing, too, is since we are going out west and we will be playing the National League Ballpark, will JD Martinez be in the lineup for the Red Sox, and where would he play? Some people say he'll play first, and some people say he'll play in the outfield. At this point, he's really just a DH. He's not really someone who plays in the field. So how will manager Alex Cora manage this situation? Will he use him off the bench, maybe as a pinch hitter and a hitter that can stay in the game for the later innings if the Red Sox need him? So does he keep JD Martinez in his back pocket and say, okay, this is our spot, I'm inserting you in the game? Or do you think he'll start at a first base or in the outfield? For me, I think, I'm not sure. It's hard to tell. I would say I wouldn't be surprised if JD Martinez doesn't play in Game 3, at least start. I think he'll play, but it'll be more in like a pinch hit role. Maybe 5th or 6th inning, Dodgers go to their bullpen, and there's a runner on. Maybe you insert JD Martinez there, reshuffle the lineup a little bit, and the defense a little bit to get him in the game and leave him in the game. But it shall be interesting to see what happens from here on out. But again, the Dodgers take commanding 2-0 lead. They did what they needed to do. They made it look a little bit easy, in my opinion, in the first 2 games. We'll see what kind of fight the Dodgers have. We'll see what kind of mettle that this team shows. It is always tough being down 2-0, and especially when you look across the dugout to the opposing dugout and you see that team. So we're going to take a short break. When we come back, we're going to talk about the National Basketball Association, some games that happened last night, a 50-point game in the NBA, some notable wins. It's still very early in the season for these NBA teams, but we will talk about what we see, or what I see, in terms of who's playing well, who should be concerned. Just an update on last night. And then, of course, in segment 3, we'll be talking about the Thursday night football preview for tonight. The Miami Dolphins, they will face the Houston Texans. And we'll do that right after this.
Are you looking for the very best NFL and college football podcast? Then check out the GSMC Football Podcast. Get the latest football news both on and off the field. From the NFL Draft to trades to the rumor mill to the NFL Combines, they got you covered. That's GSMCpodcast.com/football-podcast. Get updates on college rivalries, game day insights, and much, much more. It's football talk the way you want it. This show eats, sleeps, and breathes football. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com for more info.
Thank you for joining me once again. In the first segment, we did just talk about the World Series Game 2 as we look ahead to Game 3, Game 4, and Game 5, which will take place this weekend in Los Angeles. But now we will shift our attention to the National Basketball Association, the NBA, as we had some notable games happen last night, almost a full slate of NBA action. First game that really stands out about last night, the Los Angeles Lakers. They get their first win in the LeBron era, So they go to 1-3. They won 131-113 over the Phoenix Suns. LeBron James 19, 7 and 10. Pretty good game for him. We saw Lance Stevenson actually lead all scorers for LA, which is interesting. I'm not sure how many times we will see that this year, but he definitely led the team last night with 23 points. He also chipped in with 8 rebounds, 8 assists, so a very good game from Lance Stevenson. As we know, the Lakers were shorthanded as Rondo and Brandon Ingram have been suspended by the NBA, so still a couple games for them to sit out, but a good win for the Lakers. I would have been a little concerned if they had lost this game to the Suns because, the Lakers have had a tough schedule so far. They've played really good teams. But, this is a game you got to win. Phoenix, they look like an up-and-coming team. They're sitting at 1-3 right now, but their young rookie is definitely looking impressive. DeAndre Ayton, 22 points last night, 11 rebounds, 3 assists. I mean, that's a really good game from the rookie as he got to play against LeBron for the first time. Interesting note, though, here is Devin Booker. Something to be concerned about. He did leave the game yesterday. Looks like a hamstring injury. They say the Suns reported that it was just a strain, but it's something to be concerned about because he is absolutely one of the best two guards in the NBA, one of the best pure shooters in the NBA. The Suns, if they are going to do any damage this year at all, if they have any aspirations of, maybe sniffing around 35, 40 wins and even loftier goals than that, he's going to have to be the guy. He's going to have to be the player to lead them there. Even though he's been good for them before, he would need to take the next step in his career to lead the Phoenix Suns to better than the basement that they've been in for a few years here now. But all in all, I think the biggest takeaway here is the Lakers finally win. They will play the Nuggets in their next game, which is going to be interesting, as we know the Nuggets have started this season very, very hot. So, another game that happened last night, which we need to talk about, is Steph Curry and the Golden State Warriors. They won 144-122 at home against Washington. But the story here is Curry hit 11 threes last night, scored 51 points. Just an incredible performance. He did not even play the fourth quarter. So we're talking about 51. With the way he was shooting, he could have got up to maybe 65, 70. I mean, you might think that sounds crazy, but he had 24 shots last night, 15 of 24, 16 threes that he attempted, and he hit 11 of them. So it's not hard to see that if he played the fourth quarter and threw up another 5 or 6 threes, he maybe makes 3 or 4 based on the way he was shooting last night. So the Warriors are 4-1 now. They were pretty close to being 5-0. We did see them lose earlier in the week to the Nuggets at the buzzer, where they had a shot that was blocked at the end of the game. So all in all, just things are going smoothly for Golden State. Kevin Durant, 30 points, 13 of 18 shooting. So again, another efficient night. We look and we see that the Warriors shot 58% as a team. It's just incredible. It's if they shoot like that, it's over. I mean, let's just be honest. They probably have the best team in the NBA regardless, but if those guys can shoot, like if Durant and Curry can combine for 42 shots but give you 81 points, like what are we even doing here? That's basically my opinion on that. So the Washington Wizards, they fall to 1-3. John Wall, he only had 13 points, 2 rebounds, 6 assists, a little bit subdued game for him. Bradley Beal, 23, 3 and 4. It looked like, though, the Washington was going to play a lot of different players. They have a lot of minutes going to bench players. Maybe it's one of those games where they don't want to waste too many resources, too much energy, because they figure they'll lose anyways on the road to the Warriors. But yes, the Warriors take care of business. Notable game last night between two teams that a lot of people expect to be in the top 4, top 5 in the West. Utah, they go down to Houston and they beat the Rockets 189. Rockets are now 1-3. Another player in this game to be concerned about, James Harden. It looks like he has a leg injury as well. These little things, they might seem little, but if you have like a hamstring pull or a calf strain, these injuries are something you want to be ahead of and not behind of. You absolutely do not want to hurt your season by playing through this kind of stuff early on. We know that these guys have been working out for weeks now as they get back into the NBA season. The NBA season's only been here for about a week. So a lot of these guys are not fully conditioned. A lot of these guys are still in the early stages of being at their peak fitness. So we might see some of these little injuries happen, but I say little because, a strain here, a strain there, That's small, but it can definitely turn out to be something else. So watch for the Rockets to handle that. I would say they probably handle that situation very carefully. I would not be surprised if James Harden doesn't play in their next game. They do play the Clippers tomorrow, but then they have 4 days off between. So I would not be surprised if he does not play tomorrow and then they reassess him over the weekend there. So I mean, you could use 5 days off to recover. But it is a situation you want to monitor because the Rockets are starting 1-3. Not the best start. Harden did have 29 points on 19 shots last night, 5 rebounds, 7 assists. Before, again, he exited in the fourth quarter. So Carmelo actually off the bench last night, again, played 39 minutes. So he almost tied for the team lead in minutes as he was 1 minute behind Eric Gordon, but 39 minutes off the bench for Carmelo, 9-17, so 22, 7-2. I think that was the best game that Carmelo has played as a Rocket, but the Utah Jazz, they struggled a little bit at the beginning here. They're 2-2. Donovan Mitchell had a Donovan Mitchell type night that we saw a lot last season. 38 points, 14-25, shooting 4-9 from 3. Another fantastic game by the young guard. It's still amazing to look back and see how many teams passed on him. But the Jazz saw something in him, and they have been rewarded handsomely for taking that chance on Donovan Mitchell. But other than that, just a solid team effort for the Jazz. The next highest scorer was Rudy Gobert at 12 points on 5 shots. So a collective effort, and to hold the Rockets to 89 points really shows to the defensive ability that the Utah Jazz have, and it is something that when people say that the Jazz have a chance to get the 2nd or 3rd seed in the West this year, they really talk about how strong defensively this team is and how efficient they can be on offense. Other than Mitchell, they don't really have a big scorer. Gobert is a efficient scorer. He's a big guy. He's tough to defend. Ingles can hit those threes, but again, it's more of a collective effort from the Jazz. So we take a look at other games around the NBA. A notable game is the Cleveland Cavaliers just get blown out at home to the Brooklyn Nets. Very concerning as they lose 102-86. We knew that this team was going to suffer without LeBron James this year, but 0-4, their leading scorer is at 14 points, which is Kevin Love last night. They get blown out by Brooklyn at home. It's just I don't know what to make of this. If I thought the Cavaliers wouldn't be very good this year, but I mean it's starting to look like they might be the worst team in the league, or at least in the conversation, which really goes to show you how good LeBron James is. How I know people will sit here all the time, they say they don't like him, he's this, he's that, but man, when you see what happens to his teams when he leaves, like when he left Cleveland the first time, and now he leaves Cleveland again, and then, of course, even when he left Miami, like, those teams are nowhere in the same zip code as what they were with him. It's incredible. It's something I don't know if we've ever seen before, just so many examples from one player. Of course, other great players have moved on from teams, and their previous teams have suffered, but I can't say that I've seen the teams that go forward without LeBron suffer as much as what we have seen. I don't know if another athlete has had that effect, but at least I can't think of off the top of my head. But the Cavaliers, I mean, they get routed. A notable game that happened last night is Philadelphia 76ers. They went to Milwaukee, and they lose 123-108. Milwaukee 4-0. Antetokounmpo, triple-double, 32, 18, and 10. A great game for Milwaukee. Philadelphia was on the second night of a back-to-back, so, that should be noted. But the Sixers, they're trying to take that next step from playoff team in the East to contender, and I don't think it started out so well. A lot of season left to play, but to get blown out by Boston and blown out by Milwaukee is, albeit both are on the road, but still, you want to see a little bit more. You want to see the Sixers take the next step, and I think if you can see them win one of these regular season games against one of these teams like Toronto, Milwaukee, Boston in the Eastern Conference, then I think that's when you'll have the confidence that this team will take the next step. But as of right now, it seems like they're just, I don't know if it's early season struggles or maybe we expected too much from them. But again, it's nothing to be overly concerned about as we are 1 week into the NBA season. We always have to take these things in perspective. One team that's starting out very good, and if we only looked at their first week, we would say that they're the favorites in the East, the Toronto Raptors. They beat Minnesota last night, 112-105. Kawhi Leonard, 35 points. I think this trade, I was a big fan of this trade, this Kawhi Leonard, DeMar DeRozan trade for the Raptors. And I'm a bigger fan now. What I've seen is Kawhi be a professional. We heard the rumors that, he wouldn't report or, he doesn't want to go to Toronto. But you wouldn't know it by his actions on the court. 35 minutes, 35 points on 23 shots last night. He's just a stabilizing force for the Raptors. I like what he brings to the table as a two-way player a little bit more than what DeRozan had. I thought the Raptors had hit their ceiling with DeRozan and Lowry, that little combo. But with Kawhi and Lowry, they have a chance in the East, at least a chance to be a top 2 seed. They're 5-0. They look good. I would say that they've had as good of a first week as anybody in the NBA. And you know what? It's not easy going to a new team like Kawhi did. We've seen LeBron and the Lakers struggle a little bit with the new pieces. What's different for Kawhi is that obviously most of the team in Toronto was the same. He's really the only big difference, but it is interesting and they look very good. The Pacers, they beat San Antonio last night. They crushed San Antonio by 20 points. Oladipo had 21. The Pacers improved to 3-2. I think they're a possible playoff team. San Antonio 2-2. They're again one of those fringe Western Conference team. We all know the West is going to be tight. We all know that 10, 11 teams are going to be in the fight, just like last year. We saw 3 games separate third place from 8th place, 9th place, 10th place. It's incredible how tight the West can get after the Warriors. And maybe another team like the Rockets, we'll see. But the Spurs, they lose by 20. Their defense was very shaky last night. Popovich did talk about it, but, they're the Spurs. They're a good team. They're one of the best coached teams in the NBA, so I'm not terribly worried about them. However, we look at other games last night. We saw the 2 rookies battle it out, Doncic and Trae Young. Trae Young and the Atlanta Hawks get the better of Luka Doncic and the Dallas Mavericks, 111-104. I've liked what I've seen from these young guys in the first week. Luka, 34 minutes last night, 21 points, 9 rebounds, 2 assists, 7 of 18 shooting, 2 of 9 from 3, so his three-point shooting wasn't so great, but he's doing a little bit of everything. It's nice to see him grow as an NBA player. I know a lot of people are questioning how his experience overseas would translate, but it looks like it's translating pretty good. Trae Young did not play as many minutes as Luka. He had 26, but 17 points, only 3 of 12 shooting, 4 rebounds, 5 assists. Not the most efficient game for Trae Young, but he did get to the free throw line, so nice to see him stay aggressive because he will have nights like that where he's not shooting so great, but if he can score, if he can get to the line, help his team in other ways, that's definitely vital. And the last game, battle of another rookie battle last night as we saw Marvin Bagley go up against Jaren Jackson Jr., for the Grizzlies. So the Kings beat the Grizzlies 97-92. A strong game by Bagley. He only played 22 minutes as it was the second night of a back-to-back, but 13 points, 6 rebounds, 1 assist in 22 minutes. Not a bad start. He's had an impressive first week. He had a shaky first game with the Kings as he hardly played off the bench, but we've seen his minutes grow, and I expect Friday when they host the Wizards that his minutes will increase then too. Jaren Jackson, 30 minutes for the Grizzlies, 14.7 rebounds, 2 assists on 16 shots. a decent performance. You can see why they like him so much. He shows a little bit of everything. His three-point shooting wasn't there last night, but he's definitely someone to watch for. Marc Gasol, though, I will say, was injured late in that contest, and he had to leave the court late in the fourth quarter. So we'll see if it's a major injury or not. I'm not really sure what had happened to him, but it's something to take a look for. But that's all the action in the NBA. Again, Warriors and Steph Curry, 51 points. Lakers get their first win. But we'll take a quick break. When we come back, we're going to discuss Thursday Night Football, as tonight the NFL is back in action. We have the Miami Dolphins at Houston. So we'll talk about that right after this.
Check out the show that's built on the MMA. From the UFC to extreme cage fighting, they got the fights covered. Check out the GSMC MMA podcast. Get the latest news on past or upcoming fights. Join us as we talk to and about some of the biggest names in the MMA, past, present, and future. When it's the fight game, there's just one show to check out. GSMCpodcast.com/MMA-podcast. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com for more info.
And welcome back to the GSMC Sports Podcast, GSMC Podcast Network. I'm your host, Mark Souza. We talked about the World Series Game 2 in the first segment. We also recapped the NBA's action from last night as we transition into the National Football League, the NFL. Thursday Night Football tonight. You can catch that. Miami Dolphins, they travel a little bit west there to Houston as they play the Texans. Both teams come in at 4-3, which I'm not going to lie, that's surprising to me when I hear the 4-3 Dolphins against the 4-3 Texans. I don't know how either of these teams are 4-3, to be honest with you, but especially for the Dolphins, at least with Houston, I know that they have guys like Deshaun Watson, DeAndre Hopkins, J.J. Watt, Jadeveon Clowney. I mean, they have some names. They have some big-time playmakers on that team. But Miami, I mean, you consider they're still rolling with Brock Osweiler as Tannehill is still recovering from a shoulder injury. We have, Brock Osweiler. Some people call him the Brocktagon. It is Brocktober for everybody. If you didn't remember that it's still Brocktober. So, do I expect the Dolphins to go into Houston on a short week and win? I absolutely do not. Houston is the favorite in this game. Looks like the last time I checked it was 7.5. So a touchdown favorite. That's considerable in the NFL, as we know. A lot of games are 3-4 points, but the bettors think that Houston has this game pretty easily. DeAndre Hopkins on the season, 47 catches, 709 yards, and 4 touchdowns. He's going to go up against Xavier Howard, one of the best corners in the NFL, a player who's very underrated. He's not a big name, but Xavier Howard, look for that matchup tonight. We will see them paired up, I'm sure. I've seen DeAndre Hopkins dominate against big-time cornerbacks, so I wouldn't be surprised if he has another good game, but I would be shocked if he has a great game, if he has a huge game. But for the Dolphins, it's hard to tell what we're going to see tonight, as we know that Tannehill is hurt, so their starting quarterback's out. Kenny Stills is also out. And Albert Wilson, who's had a couple breakout games for the Miami Dolphins, just got put on IR with a hip injury, which sounds absolutely terrible, if I'm being completely honest. So the Dolphins, Kenyon Drake, Frank Gore, Brock Osweiler. On the outside, we'll have Devontae Parker. They'll have Danny Amendola, who had a decent game in the last game for Miami. So maybe he'll be another player tonight that Osweiler looks to throw to early and often in this game. The Texans, I mentioned that I wasn't sure how they were 4-3 because they've had some struggles. They've looked iffy at times, but they are 10th in total offense and 9th in defense, which I was actually surprised. I knew that their defense was pretty solid just by watching them, but I didn't know that they would actually be that high up. But the offense, they don't really run the ball. Lamar Miller is he's just not one of the top NFL running backs. I'd say he might be the worst starting running back in the NFL. They don't get too much from their run game. As we know, it's Watson and Hopkins and Fuller. Kiki Kuti is out for Houston. He had been their impressive third receiver this year, working at times out of the slot. A couple games where he was Deshaun's preferred target, or maybe second preferred target, but he's had an eye-opening season. He will not be in the lineup tonight for the Houston Texans. It's a big game. It's a big game for both of these teams. Houston is looking to take control of the AFC South. They are in first place, but they're looking to gain some separation. And if you look at the rest of the division, the Colts, they're at the bottom of the division, although they've been playing decent as of late. They're still a couple wins behind Houston. I'm not going to say they're dead and out of it yet, because they're definitely not, especially if Andrew Luck just keeps dragging that team to wins. But I'm not so sure about Jacksonville and Tennessee. Both of those teams seem to be on the downward trend. The arrow seems to be pointing down on them as we see inconsistent quarterback play from both of those teams. Tennessee with Mariota, I'm not sure if he has hit a wall in his progression or what, but he just doesn't look like a confident pocket quarterback in the NFL. That offense is discombobulated there in Tennessee, not very efficient. Derrick Henry is very inefficient as a running back. Deion Lewis provides them a little bit more versatility and explosiveness, but they haven't been able to translate that to good offense. So you look at Tennessee, their defense is okay, their offense is struggling. And then you look at Jacksonville, and we know about Blake Bortles and his struggles. It seems like for the last couple of years, we've been hearing about, is it time for the Eli trade from New York? And when you talk about Eli Manning saving your team, saving your offense, what are you really saying there? You're basically saying that that your current quarterback is just not good enough. You're saying that you have no confidence in your young quarterback that you just signed to an extension. And Jacksonville's defense has had a little bit more cracks this year than they've had last year. Last year, they were, in my opinion, the best defense in the NFL. I know they were up there statistically. I don't know if they had finished 1 or 2, but man, that defense is something else with those cornerbacks. Ramsey, Bouye, when they have the pass rush going, that team is scary on defense. But we've seen this year with the struggles of the Jacksonville offense that, they can't sustain anything on offense to help out their defense. And I don't know if it's fatigue. I don't know what it could be with Jacksonville, but that offense is not playing well, and it's translating to their defense not playing well. So what is my overall point? My overall point is that the Texans might have the best offense and the best defense in their division. Certainly the best offense, in my opinion. I would say that the Colts are second, but when you look at the teams, Houston is blessed with more talent than Indianapolis is. I will give the slight edge to Andrew Luck just because I've seen him do so much with such little in Indianapolis. But, look at the skill positions. I don't really need to talk about the running backs. Marlon Mack is the running back for the Colts. He's had a couple impressive games coming off of injury. But him and Lamar Miller, probably give the edge to Marlon Mack there just because by default. But again, DeAndre Hopkins, Will Fuller, those receivers, those two right there, all about those over Indianapolis's pair of T.Y. Hilton and Chester Rogers or Ryan Grant, whoever else is starting on the outside. But Miami at Houston, I just don't know if this is going to be a good game. I think the last few primetime games that we've seen, even like when the Packers and 49ers played, I thought it would be a sneaky good game just because the Packers playing on Monday night, still Aaron Rodgers not 100%. The Niners we knew could score points. So I thought the game was going to be sneaky good. We saw the Bengals just lay an egg against the Chiefs the other night, which was, that wasn't fun to watch. It was over early. I mean, it's fun if you like offense and you like the Chiefs and all that, but in terms of competition, it wasn't a very competitive football game. So tonight, I don't know. It looks like it won't be the most exciting game. I could see where Houston gets the lead and they play conservatively as they don't want to maybe overextend in this game since it's on a short week. Maybe you rotate players in a little bit more just to give your main guys rest, protect them from injury. The key here is Osweiler. If that offense for Miami can put up some points, especially early, maybe we'll see a game that is interesting. That will get your attention in late in the third, in the fourth quarter. But it is up to that offensive line to protect him as guys like J.J. Watt and Clowney. You can rest assured that those two will be creating havoc. They'll be blowing plays up in the backfield. It's hard for me to see Frank Gore being able to have success tonight as he tries to navigate through that defensive line. Kenyon Drake as well. Kenyon Drake has been inconsistent all year, but he can make a big play every now and then. But, man, you got some of your receivers are out. You're starting Osweiler, Devontae Parker, Danny Amendola. It's a Jakeem Grant, another receiver that's more of a return man that's being thrown into the fire. It'll be a tough game for Miami. If I'm being honest, I think we'll see a score of something like 27-13 Houston. I think that sounds about right. I think the home fans will be jacked up, and like I mentioned, I just think this is such an opportunity for Houston. They're in first place. If they win this game, they go to 5-3. Then you have a big rest. You have extra days off. You can go 5-3 into halfway through your season. I think that would be successful, as Deshaun Watson has returned from a major knee injury, an ACL tear. So if you can get into Week 9 at 5-3, if you can get into Week 9 with no major injury to your quarterback or top players, I think that would be phenomenal. And, like I mentioned, with the other three teams in your division kind of floundering right now, your arrow is pointing up, their arrow is pointing down. You can put a lot of pressure on those teams behind you. So that's what we have on tap for Thursday night. When we come back, we'll talk about some other news and notes around sports. We had Champions League for all the soccer fans out there in world soccer. Champions League was this week, yesterday, and on Tuesday we'll talk about some of those scores. And of course, the pay-for-play scheme that has gone down with high-profile basketball recruits. We have news regarding that, so we'll be right back.
Are you looking for help for your fantasy football team? Check out the GSMC Fantasy Football Podcast. Get today's best advice on who to start, who to sit, even who you should draft. From sleeper picks to red-hot lineups, they got it all covered for you. That's GSMCpodcast.com/fantasy-football-podcast. We'll cover traditional leagues, dynasty, PPR, even IDP leagues. When you need fantasy help, there's just one show to hit up. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com for more info.
And welcome back. This is the fourth and final segment for the GSMC Sports Podcast. Thank you for joining me today. We have talked about Game 2 of the World Series and what the World Series outlook looks like for the Dodgers and the Red Sox. We talked about the NBA, some news and notes around the league, and we talked about Thursday Night Football as Miami and Houston will face off tonight. So yesterday we had the UEFA Champions League back in action as we saw match day 3. Barcelona defeats Inter from Italy 2-0. Tottenham 2, PSV Eindhoven 2, PSG 2, Napoli 2, Galatasaray Schalke 0-0, Porto over Lokomotiv Moscow 3-1. Of course, Liverpool and Mo Salah, they win 4-0 over Red Star Belgrade. And Borussia Dortmund with the shock of the day as they defeat Atletico by a scoreline of 4-0, something that Atletico is certainly not used to. So, a big day in UEFA Champions League is we are now halfway through of the group stage, and action will resume here in a couple weeks. But as we move on, we saw Steph Curry. I talked about him in his 51 points last night. He's now 5th all-time in made threes, which it seems incredible. It seems fast. Like, it seems like that should have taken longer. Like, it's crazy to me. He is now 5th, 2,162 all-time three-pointers made. He's right behind Kyle Korver. Kyle Korver only about 55, 56 ahead of Curry, so he could get there this season. I would bet that he definitely catches Korver this year. And then Jason Terry, Reggie Miller, and Ray Allen ahead. Ray Allen is about 811 made three-pointers higher than Curry. I think Curry will end up catching him. You know, Curry has a long career ahead of him still. He's been in the league for quite some time, but even down the road, I would say even if he starts slowing down here in 3 or 4 years in terms of his on-court prowess, I can still see him being a dominant three-point shooter. Kind of like a Korver. Korver is not the same player as he used to be, but he's still a spot-up shooter. He still can add value to teams. And I could see that being like the worst-case scenario for Curry down the road as he, I'm not sure. It's hard to tell at this point what athletes think, how long they plan on playing, especially somebody who's had so much success like Curry. I mean, in a couple of years, in 2 or 3 years, he might say, you know what, I've done everything, I'm done, and that's that. But if he chooses to play 6, 7, 8 more years, who knows? Sky's the limit. So, moving on, a jury on Wednesday convicted 3 men, 3 Adidas employees, in a pay-for-play scheme to influence high-profile basketball recruits to attend NC State, Louisville, and Kansas. As we know, this scandal's been going on for a couple years now, but felony charges of wire fraud, conspiracy to commit wire fraud, after a 3-week trial in New York. So the 3 employees, James Gatto, Merle Code, and Christian Dawkins, they are accused or actually convicted of this scheme. So the 3 defendants, they have been convicted. We will see what their punishment is. Just sad that we see some corruption, and I'm not naive. I know it goes on, but it's never something that's fun to talk about. It's a harsh reality when you have corporations, you have millions of dollars involved. It's easy to see why maybe why these things happen, why these shady things happen, but the best thing for the NCAA and for the FBI is to make sure that their sport, these college athletics are not tainted, these high school athletics are not tainted by outside sources, by endorsement deals, by shoe and clothing companies. It's definitely a black eye for Adidas, in my opinion. It's not something you want to be associated with, but let's not be naive to think that they're the only company that's involved in things like this. Let's not be naive to think that, this is just a couple guys in one company doing things that are a little shady, that are against the rules. And these young athletes, they can be very influenced by others. They can be influenced by money, especially young athletes who may not come from the best backgrounds, the most comfortable home situations. They're easy targets a lot of times. So with that being said, I'm glad to see that these men have been convicted for the crimes that they've committed. The Minnesota Twins, they've hired Rocco Baldelli, who used to be a baseball player in the Major League Baseball, but he spent the last 4 seasons as a coach in the Tampa Bay Rays organization, and he was a former player for the Rays. He's 37 years old. He'll become the youngest manager in the majors. They will introduce him today. Of course, the Minnesota Twins will introduce him today as a new manager. So he played with the Rays. He played at the Red Sox. He will replace Paul Molitor. So Paul Molitor, 4 seasons with Minnesota. Again, another former player, 305 and 343 in his 4 seasons. So 305 wins, 343 losses. That won't get it done. And then you can see why they dismissed him as the manager and are transitioning into Rocco Baldelli. An interesting story that happened was David Stern, former NBA commissioner, calling Dell Demps, the Pelicans general manager. He called him a quote-unquote lousy general manager, which is interesting, slightly humorous to hear David Stern speaking in an in-depth interview with Sports Illustrated say those words. He did discuss the whole Chris Paul trade, the whole Chris Paul non-trade. I'm sure many people out there remember, but if you don't, Chris Paul was headed to the Lakers until it got shot down due to the New Orleans franchise at the time. They were going through a sale. They were changing ownership, and David Stern kind of stepped in and said, no, we're not going to let this happen. So Paul ended up getting traded, but this time to the Clippers, which is very controversial. A lot of NBA fans, a lot of sports fans will look at that and say, yeah, that was kind of shady what happened. But the news story here is Dell Demps being called a lousy manager by David Stern. And of course, the Pelicans released a statement last night saying that they're disappointed to read the inappropriate and inaccurate comments from former NBA commissioner regarding the Pelicans. They talked about how the organization has the utmost confidence in Dell Demps. He's part of the family. The team has started off really well, basically, is what the gist of that was. But we will end this show today. Remember, Thursday Night Football tonight, Miami Dolphins at Houston. Tomorrow, Major League Baseball World Series starts back up. Game 3 out west in LA as the Red Sox look to take a commanding 3-0 lead on top of their 2-0 lead, and the Dodgers look to win a game and show that they have some fight and that this series is far from over. But we will talk about that tomorrow. We'll talk about tomorrow's baseball game on tomorrow's sports podcast. But stay tuned. Again, check out our football podcast, fantasy football, soccer, baseball. We pretty much cover all the sports in detail. So if you haven't checked those out, the GSMC Podcast Network is your source for all your sports needs. Thank you again, and we'll see you beautiful people tomorrow.
You've been listening to the Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast, part of the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. You can find this show and others like it at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Download our podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and Google Play. Just type in GSMC to find all the shows from the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network, from movies to music, from sports to entertainment, and even weird news. You can also follow us on Twitter and on Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's program.